Greetings viewers and welcome back. In this video I'm going to attempt to make a mold of an existing piece using Greenstuff. I didn't really cover this in the Greenstuff video because I've not tried this before, so this will be a first for me and hopefully we can both learn something while I go through and do it. I've read up on it a little bit, seen a couple videos, so I'm going to go ahead and try it based on what I've seen and experienced from other people's trials and errors and explanations of how to do this. As you can see, I've got the Greenstuff from the previous video from Citadel. I also went ahead and bought some Greenstuff from miniwargaming.com online web store. Comes in a big tube like this. As you can see, the packaging already is significantly larger than the Citadel one, and the amount of Greenstuff that you actually get in it is quite a bit. There's way more stuff in one of these single colors of the tube than you get out of the entire packaging from both colors combined in this one. So not a bad value if you plan on using a lot of Greenstuff, or you just want to make sure you have plenty on hand to give it a try with whatever it is you're going to be doing with it. Not a bad investment to make, and then that way again you'll have more, so as you do a little bit of trial and error you have some more to essentially waste and use, and then still not be out and have to go get more. Okay, moving on to the actual reason for this video. I have a part here. It's a leg from a Tyranid Biovore from one of the fine cast kits. I had ordered a couple of these from Games Workshop. One of them that arrived at the house was actually missing this piece out of the box. Contacted Games Workshop customer support. They are excellent as always. They immediately sent out a brand new model, and the only issue with that is now I have one extra Biovore. He's just missing a leg. I've shopped around all over the internet, eBay, Bartertown. I've looked pretty much everywhere. I cannot find this part or anybody that has one and is willing to part with it. So what I'm going to attempt to do is actually make a mold of it and then use some Greenstuff once that mold has been created to try and cast my own. I'm fairly certain it won't be exactly, high quality detail as this. It'll probably be pretty close, and that's kind of what I need. The other option is to attempt to sculpt it, which I am absolutely not good at all, so that is not necessarily an option for me. Maybe some of you guys out there are better at it, will be better suited to the task. I am not, so I'm going to attempt to do it this way. My hope is that I can at least get the clump of Greenstuff to look somewhat like this, so that once I stick it on the model and paint it up, it won't really be noticeable, except probably for me when I pick it up and look at it, specifically knowing what was going on with it. So what I'm going to actually do to create this part, or attempt to create it, I've got my little bin here from the basing kit that I showed you previously, just a little plastic lid and tub. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to explain everything as I typically do in my videos before I go into the hands-on portion of it, so it makes sense as I'm doing it and I don't get sidetracked while actually doing it and trying to talk. I'm going to take the lid, I'm going to roll up my yellow and blue parts to make the Greenstuff, fill up this top lid section here. I'm going to put some petroleum jelly in here first, so that when I'm done with this, the Greenstuff doesn't necessarily become a part of this lid and I have to throw it away, so it'll make it easier to remove that piece out of here. So I'm going to get my Greenstuff nice and set in there with the petroleum jelly underneath it. I'll take my part and have it pressed down into the Greenstuff to get basically a mold of one side of it. I'll have to put some more petroleum jelly on top of it too, just to make sure this doesn't stick and get set into the Greenstuff, because that would do me no good, and then I'd be out 2 legs. So I'm going to get it pressed in there, make sure that it's not going to get stuck when it dries, and then I'm going to let it sit, so then when the video comes back it will have dried. I'll probably let it sit for a whole day just to make sure that nothing is going on with it. Then probably what I'm going to do is I'll probably pop the whole mold out, put in another layer of the Greenstuff, flip it over and press it onto the leg, which I will leave inside the original mold, and put some more petroleum jelly on it. Press this onto there to get the imprint of the second side. I'll probably pull it off at that point and let it dry. Then that way when I come back I'll have 2 opposite halves of this piece. Then all I will have to do is take each of those 2 halves, put the glob of regular wet Greenstuff in there, smash it together, let it sit for a second to dry, pull it apart, and then I should have a piece that once that dries it should be hopefully somewhat identical to this. I mean, even if it's close and it's not perfect, I'm probably still going to use it, because I mean, if I've got it I might as well do something. Other than that, I'm going to have to go through my bits box and try and create an arm. So we're going to see if this works first. If it does, great. If it doesn't, well then hopefully you can learn from my errors, or I'll figure out what I did wrong and we'll see how to do it properly. So I'm going to go ahead and roll up a bunch of green stuff. You don't need to see me how to do that because I showed you previously. And when I come back, we'll start pressing it in here. Alright, so I'm back. I've got my giant ball of green stuff ready to go. It took me a couple tries to get the amount just right, but I think I may have enough finally. So I'm going to just go ahead and put some Vaseline, petroleum jelly, whatever you want to call it, in the bottom here. Because again, I don't want my mold actually sticking to this because I want to be able to use this lid again for something. Now that we've got that coated, I'm just going to go ahead and put my giant ball of green stuff in the bottom half of the mold. And then I'm going to press it down with the other half here just because I want to make it kind of uniform. I want it to go down in there just right. I don't want to use my fingers and start making dimples in it and fingerprint marks. Bottom mold portion. Now I am going to squeeze some on the top of here because again I'm going to do the same thing. I don't want my part to stick to the mold because then that kind of again defeats the purpose and I'm going to be down 2 legs instead of just 1. So I'm trying to also use the flat end of the sculpting tool to kind of try and smooth out the green stuff where my part's going to go while spreading this petroleum jelly on there. And then I'm going to make sure there's enough on the mold here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and coat the actual leg in it as well, just to make sure that I've got plenty on there. I don't want any reason for this thing to not come out when I want it to. Alright, I'm guessing I got enough on there, so we'll go ahead and get this pressed down into the mold. Now I want to make sure that I keep this as level as possible and press straight down, because if I start going at an angle and kind of going in funky with it, it's definitely not going to work as I want it to. So I'm just going to press straight down. And then now if you look at this, you can see around the edges of it where it kind of sinks in around it. That would make the part probably a little bit too big compared to where it needs to be. So then what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and take this and press it down and in towards it just to kind of give it a little bit tighter tolerance. So whenever I go and make my other piece, the other half of the mold to this, hopefully it'll work right. It's kind of ugly looking, but again I'm going to now let this sit for probably about 24 hours, so I'll have to come back tomorrow or sometime after this has dried and I'm confident that it's not going to fall apart on me, and then it's ready to go, and I'll try and get that piece out there and make a mold of the other side. So after 4 days, my little Greenstuff hockey puck is nice and hard and set. It popped out really easily from the lid using the petroleum jelly, so that worked well. The next step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit more jelly on here just to make sure I don't get any residual stickiness, and then I'm going to place this on top of here and smash it down and see if we can get a mold made of the other side. And I think it might actually work out that this thing isn't exactly smooth. And it's got all these little ridges on here so that when I press the second portion on there, when I go ahead and actually, once both sides are complete and I go to put my soft green stuff in here to make the part, it'll have a point of reference to lock into, so I'm not kind of guessing and then the arm comes out crooked or kind of oriented wrong essentially when I go to actually make the part. So all we're doing right now is making the second half of the mold, which hopefully go to this side here. So I'm going to take my nice rounded side, put it straight down in the center here, and then we're going to go ahead and get a little bit of water and then just go ahead and smash it down. So now it's all up to the petroleum jelly to make sure that this doesn't stick, and I can actually remove it once it's dried and my part will break free. Now I am going to press it down a little bit on the edges here because it's kind of raised here. It's got like a little lip, so hopefully that'll help me with my reference point again. Once I remove this and in its hardened state, I can jam it right back together and it'll be in the exact same orientation. And all we have is basically a resin leg inside of a Greenstuff sandwich. So we'll let this sit for a day or two and then we'll go ahead and peel hopefully peel it apart and be able to remove the leg and try and crank out a mold of that leg. Alright, so we've got our Greenstuff sandwich here. I'm going to go ahead and see how easily this thing wants to come apart for me. Hopefully it doesn't give us too much trouble. This top half is not probably as good as it could be, but it is still pretty defined at least. There wasn't a whole lot sticking up from the top. So far not too bad of a match. Let's see if we can even get this thing out of here. Alright, so the leg came off. We've got a pretty decent mold there of one side. The main important part here is going to be that we get this just right. Smashing it back again with the Greenstuff. It appears as though it'll go in a good manner where we want it. It's just going to be very, very important to make sure there's plenty of petroleum jelly on here to keep it so that the Greenstuff will actually come out when we're ready for it to. We're going to have to give it a nice dousing before putting the ball of Greenstuff in there. So I'm going to go ahead and get this slimed up, and then I'll roll up my Greenstuff. When we come back, we'll put it in there, smash the two halves together, and see what we get after that whole setup dries. Okay, so I made sure to completely slather both halves of this mold with some more petroleum jelly. I've got my piece of Greenstuff that's ready to get pressed in here. The major difficult part with this is kind of deciding how much to use to push into the mold, because if you put too much, it's going to have really nowhere to go once you press the two halves together, and it's probably going to keep the mold from actually compressing, or it's going to leak out a little bit in between them and have a lot more extra material on there than you want. But then again, if you use too little, you're not going to have enough to create the part that you want. So you push the two halves together, you're not going to have enough compression in there to force it down in and create the shape that you want. So what I've done is I've kind of half created the similar shape of what I want to press down in here, and I'm just going to kind of smash it down in and make sure I've got enough in there, so if I need a little extra I can tack it on before I go ahead and close the other half on top of it. So I'm just going to go ahead and press this down in here. And then now we have to make sure that this is lined up just like it was when we created the piece, because otherwise we're going to end up having basically something that we don't want. So we got to make sure we press this down just the same as it was. We'll go ahead and smear this around the edges just to make sure we don't get another issue with it not wanting to separate, since we got a little extra jelly out here. I can already tell this is kind of pushing itself away just a little bit, which probably means I probably have way too much in there. However, at least if I push it hard enough, it should create the shape that we want before it kind of rebounds a little bit. And then hopefully that way it'll create the shape that we want. So yet again, we're going to let this sit. Hopefully this will be the last time. So when we come back again and this is dry, we'll separate it and have something that resembles a leg, at least enough to the point that it will be usable for the purposes of what I'm trying to do. And hopefully we can all learn a little something from this process. So we're back. I have already separated the two halves just so I didn't have to waste time doing it on camera, and I'll go ahead and show you what I found inside. This is the top half of the mold. It's got nothing in it. This is the bottom half where we had more of the actual part that was showing through. As you can see, obviously it looks all green. It looks like we just have a smushed part in there that's not going to come out. All the extra green stuff that didn't get squeezed into the space where the arm actually was kind of gushed out to the side here, where it looks like it's got kind of this little skin thing going on. So we can lift this piece out, and what we're left with is a part. Not necessarily like what you would find in the package, but essentially it's the same thing. Where all this skin stuff is where your mold line would be running around the outside of the parts, where the two molds press together, obviously. So this is still kind of flimsy. The Greenstuff has hardened, but this little flappy skin portion on the outside of it should be easy to cut away with the X-Acto knife. Now, like I mentioned when I first started this project, I wasn't expecting this to be the exact same quality as the part we were casting. I was just kind of more a trial run, hoping to see that it would work, and for the most part it has. As you can see, we definitely have the original shape going on here that we started with. The back side, maybe not as much. You can see right there in the middle where some of the Greenstuff didn't completely come together, and there's a little fold there. Like I said, not a huge deal. Once I paint it up, at least it'll look somewhat like the part that I started with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut this little skin area away from the outside and see how close we are to it. And perhaps once I've got this all taken care of and I get the model assembled, I'll show you what it looks like with it attached to it. So let's go ahead and take our little handy X-Acto knife here and cut this skin away. So again, for the most part, we've got at least the shape down. The portion in here where it had kind of a little sinewy looking piece, such as right there that was stretching across, it's kind of filled in. It didn't really get defined very well in the mold. Again, not an exact replica of the part. There's still quite a bit of detail that may have been missed or left out. But I at least have the general shape, and if I go ahead and throw this on the model and paint it, I could probably stand it next to the other biovores that I have, and unless, you know, of course if I pick it up I'll know, but if somebody else picks it up and looks at it, they may, you know, think something's a little funky, but for the most part, from a distance together in the Army, it should not be too bad. I could probably go back and try this again and maybe get a little bit better quality out of it. As for me though, this is good enough. I wouldn't suggest trying to create an entire army of guys to save some money by molding your own unless you kind of perfect the technique a little bit. I'll just keep throwing my money at Games Workshop and keeping them in business to create more models. So again, this will be good enough. It's not perfect. I mean, this is the little pad that's actually going to go on the base. Probably could have left a little bit more of the extra on there. So as long as that's good, and then the joint where it's going to go into the model's fine. Again, I have the general shape, it'll go on there, we'll make it work and see what we can do. I'll show you what it looks like once it's actually on the model and then when I paint it. So thanks for watching, hope you guys enjoyed this, and stay tuned for the next video. Thanks.